Welcome to the Halloween special of Lizzie's Bedtime Stories. And I have a wonderful returning guest, Diane Dekelb Rettenhouse, and she has something ultra special just for the audience of Lizzie's Bedtime Stories. So I'm very super excited about that. Welcome back to the show, Diane.
Thank you for having me back, Liz.
It's awesome. So, do you dig the new music?
I love it. Oh my God, I was so about to just laugh all over the place. I figured that would break the mood, so I stopped myself, but that was perfect. That was absolutely perfect.
I know. And apparently, Mother Nature is also a contributor to some of the recordings. Because I am in the windiest room of the house, and I live a few blocks from the ocean, and we're getting some of the reverb from a hurricane that was in the south. So it's not a hurricane, it's just windy as all get out. So if you hear any whirring or howling or whatever, it is courtesy of Mother Nature.
Okay.
So can you give us a little bit of context for the reading that you're doing this evening?
Okay, a little bit of context. This is technically a scene from a novel that I have just begun to work on, and I cannot work on actively right now because I have other commitments. Mm-hmm. The novel is tentatively titled Mistress of the Dark, and it is a Regency vampire love story. And this scene is when our vampire awakes after being imprisoned for many, many years. So we are in a Russian forest sometime in the late 18th, early 19th century.
Wicked.
And I should add that, this is a rough draft. This version of that scene in the novel was crafted specifically to be a standalone reading for your show.
Thank you so much.
It may not even appear in the novel. It may appear in a vastly different form, but you will have this version for your show.
Oh, yay. So read to me, Diane. Read to me.
Okay, Lizzie, here we go. Kiss from a Rose. A Halloween fairy tale for wicked children. If there had not been a murder, there would not have been a rose. If the thief left to welter in his own blood had been slain above the moldering bones of an ordinary corpse, his blood would not have sunk so deeply into the earth and woken that which waited there. Fate would have it otherwise. The blood sank, and something else began to rise. When it had risen sufficiently, it did what it had been created to do. It waited. Many years passed before Minka came upon the rose, though she supposed she knew the woods as well as any other girl of her village. The entire 23 years of her life had been spent living at the edge of it, after all. One day, when she went to gather blackberries, there was no rose to be seen growing on the mound of earth. The next day, there was. Seeing it, Minka forgot all about the berries she was supposed to be picking, or her anger with her father, who was tired of her continued refusal to marry, or her disgust with Bludek, the latest idiot her father thought would make a fine husband, or at least a fine son-in-law. In a moment, they were nothing. There was only the rose, growing in the deepest shadows of the forest, the sole bloom, a miracle of beauty amidst its bed of sharp and twisted thorns. A present just for her. Minka gasped in pleasure, her berry basket falling unregarded to the forest floor as she hurried over toward the mound upon which the rose was blooming. Drawing closer, she saw she would have to climb a little way up the mound to secure her prize, but that was of no moment. The prize was one worth having. She lifted her skirts above her slim white ankles and made her way upward toward the tangle of briars where the rose was enthroned. Quickly she ascended, and soon the flower was within her reach. She didn't grasp for it immediately, content to spend a moment simply gazing at it. Minka had never seen anything as lovely as this rose. How perfectly formed were its petals, which showed no blemish but were as flawless as Minka's own complexion. How deep and rich was its color, as red as Minka's pretty lips. How full was the blossom, as sweetly rounded as Minka's firm, ripe breasts. How rich and deep was the forest soil in which it grew, black as midnight or as Minka's long, thick hair. When at last she could bear no more, Minka reached out to brush her nimble fingers across the petals of the rose. Oh, how soft were those petals, damp with dew, as soft and dewy as the secret places Bludic had tried to paw at, places Minka never quite dared to touch herself as she lay abed at night. Minka stroked the petals gently, again. I have waited. Minka drew her hand back in surprise and looked about. Had someone spoken? No. She had merely heard the leaves of the trees overhead, rustling in a faintly stirring summer breeze. Minka reached for the blossom once more. A cry of delight was pulled from her as the rose seemed to unfurl at her touch, and a heady, exquisite perfume came from its petals, more intoxicating than any wine. How much I need you. It was true. Minka needed the rose, must have it, she thought dizzily, nearly swooning from the delicious scent the flower released, just for her. This treasure was meant to be hers. Minka knew it in her bones, knew she alone could tend it as it was meant to be tended. Yes, my darling, you will care for me. She would cut it free of the ugly briars, let it root in the rich soil she would find for it, nourish it, shelter it, cherish it. Minka reached for the stem, thinking she saw a way to keep clear of the thorns. That was the trick and the trap. Even as her hand closed upon the stem, a thin cane of briars whipped about her wrist, and thorns sinking deep into her tender flesh. Minka cried out, the sting of the thorns a fiery torment burning into her. Suddenly, there were more thin strands of cane whipping about her, pulling her deeply into the tangle of briars, shredding her skirts and her bodice, pulling her down into the heart of the nest of canes, the center of the bed of thorns. Hush, my darling, all will be well. No, screamed Minka, thrashing and writhing against her restraints, and again, no! But the thorns, long deprived of sustenance, were hungry. They tangled themselves around her, wrapping about her slender thighs, her supple arms, her narrow waist, quieting her struggles, forcing her to yield and lie supine, submissive to their will. They drank from her as Minka's screams turned into wails, turned into moans and gasps and whimpers. And then they turned into something else. Be still, my sweet, my treasure. Above Minka the rose shook, and petals, soft as a maiden's kiss, drifted through the tangle of canes to land on her poor abraded flesh. Where they landed, the sting of thorns faded, transmuted, the fire they caused becoming something other than a torment. Or perhaps the torment itself became other than what it had been. Minka shuddered as more canes snaked their way toward her from the briars above, lapping her limbs in a viny prison. She was well and truly caught, but she no longer struggled, no longer wished to be released. Yes, the thorns burned, but sweetly so, and the caressing petals soothed away whatever sting remained. And now the caress of petals became deeper, more intimate, touching those secret places she had never dared explore herself. With a little cry, she opened herself to further touches, writhing now in delight instead of terror. The dew of the rose petals was not so plentiful as the dew on Minka's white thighs. She did not know how long she lay there, a willing captive of the thorns. Surely the forest had become darker now, and what could the fiery light above her be but the setting sun, burnishing the petals of her precious rose? Now the canes had done their work. The thorns had fed, and in feeding had given nourishment to that which required it. Something deep within the earth began to rise as the thorns and the rose had risen before it, their creator and their purpose. It came forth just as the sun disappeared beneath the horizon. Minka's eyes widened as it erupted from the ground, a tall, dreadful figure, skeletal shape clad in decaying rags. Gray hair matted with dirt and leaves fell in lank tangles about its shoulders. Dirt was ingrained in its skin. Its eyes burned red in its corpse-white face. Then it shook itself free of the illusion, and in the last glow of sunset, Minka could see it as it really was, could see her lover. Dirt and leaves fell away from hair that shimmered like moonlight as the rags and earth fell away from the sweet and supple figure of a goddess. Tall, yes, and her eyes burned, but they were as silver as her moonlight-colored hair, and the fire in them was a most delicious heat. I have you at last, little dove. Daritsa, Minka knew. Somehow she knew. Daritsa, a fitting name for a queen. With a glad cry, Minka opened her arms, the canes which had restrained her falling away. Her lover accepted the embrace, coming into her arms, showering her lips with kisses sweeter than the petals of the roses which were now scattered about them. Firm hands slipped across every inch of Minka's young body, gently exploring the swell of her belly, the curve of her hip, the softness of her breasts, the tender flesh of her thighs. I have waited for you so long, Dushka, Daritsa said in a voice like honey, trailing her hand in a leisurely path from Minka's neck down her torso. Minka squirmed, knowing quite well where she wished that hand to travel, but lacking the words to express her desire. Her lover chuckled. I've waited too long to rush matters now. Minka whined in disappointment, but Daritsa took Minka's lips in another lingering kiss, and the girl swooned in delight. How quickly you learn, little one, and how sweetly you respond to me, Daritsa said between kisses. You know you are mine, do you not? Another searing kiss claimed Minka's lips. Always, mistress, always, Minka gasped when her lover's lips left her own to trail kisses along her neck and down the path that had been taken by her hand. Daritsa placed loving kisses to Minka's soft white eyes and then little playful nips to the tender flesh there. Minka moaned, spreading her thighs further apart, allowing Daritsa whatever she wished, whatever she desired to take. Daritsa desired to take all. More kisses to Minka's thighs, a trail of them to the tender flesh behind her knee, another trail down her shapely calves and over the high arches of her little feet. Minka was dizzy with joy, languid from the kiss of rose and thorn, and lips more red than her own. Suddenly, Daritsa rose above her, stared down upon her intently, passionately, possessively. You are mine. Say it, Minka's goddess demanded. I am yours, forever yours, only yours, Minka declared passionately with all her soul. Daritsa's red lips parted in a wide smile, showing teeth white as pearls and sharp as thorns. Minka felt them first at her breast, her nipple taken softly between red lips, teased with a soft, wet tongue and delicately nipped by those thorn-sharp teeth. Moaning, Minka pressed herself closer to the delightful torment and reached up to embrace her lover, thinking perhaps to return the pleasure being given with a pleasing caress of her own. To her surprise, the canes whipped about her wrists, imprisoning her once more, though they did not sink into her flesh this time. No, my dove, Daritsa said with a hint of sorrow, this must be just for you. Later, I will show you how best to please me. Minka did not understand, but knew she must obey. She lay back on the mound of earth and let Daritsa do as she willed. Daritsa willed to taste Minka's sweet breasts, while her strong, long fingers trailed lazily down the girl's belly and found at last Minka's secret folds, now drenched with a perfume more potent and heady even than that of the rose. Then, at last, they found the place that Ludek had tried for, that it had not previously caressed, that the roses had only lightly teased, and the thorns all but ignored. At last, the secret place was discovered, the hidden territory claimed. Daritza raised her head from Minka's breast, smiled down tenderly, then pressed hot kisses to the girl's sweet lips. Minka felt her lover's finger part her, pierce her, enter her. She sobbed in delight against the lips claiming her own, and then those lips left her mouth, once more kissing downward, until lips and tongue abetted the work of busy fingers. Minka cried out in pleasure she had never known. Daritza's tongue lashed at her most secret places, bringing unknown, unguessed-at rapture. Had she thought the thorns had burned her? It was nothing to the fire in which Minka now was bathed, a fire in which she wished to burn. The fire within her built and built, burning along her veins, searing every nerve with ecstasy. And suddenly it was as if everything in the world was centered in Minka's own sweet core, and that nothing existed but the feel of Daritza's red lips and velvet tongue on Minka's secret flesh, her strong fingers buried within it. Pleasure swept Minka, overwhelmed her, consumed her, and she wanted nothing more than for that peak of rapture to go on unendingly. And it was in that moment that Daritza moved above her once more, with caresses more bold, more demanding than any she had yet given. Maritza was swooning in the aftermath of delight, but she would deny her mistress nothing. She opened her mouth to the invading tongue, pressed her nest of ebon curls to a nest of moonlit ones, and let them tease each other to new heights of pleasure. Finally, Daritza broke the kiss. "Oh, my dove, you do delight my heart," she murmured, then nuzzled against Minka's neck. The bite of the thorns had been nothing to this, as thin ivory fangs slid deep into the pulsing vein at Minka's neck, and the girl exploded in a symphony of pain and pleasure that was more ecstatic than all that had gone before. Minka died screaming her rapture to the stars, and Daritza drank down every last whimper and cry. At length, Daritza finished feeding, pushing away from the drained body of her paramour, standing up and stretching. She was full and replete for the first time in centuries. She had been kept too long in that earthen prison and spent too much time in slumber. Yet there had been some little compensation. While she had slept, the earth had whispered its secrets to her, secrets her enemy could not know. Daritza called to the thorns, which once more wrapped about Minka's body, pulling the girl beneath the earth to sleep in her turn, concealing the resting place against the searchers who would doubtless seek her when she did not return to her home. 3 nights. That was all the time Daritza had. She must make use of one of those secrets she had learned, securing a trove of gold and jewels hidden in the earth nearby. Use it to purchase the goods she would need, hire a carriage, hire a house, hire servants and guards and grooms, and most especially hire a seamstress. She meant to dress in the fashion that became her proper station, even if that fashion was far different from the one she had known so long ago. Things were done so differently in this age to which she had woken, to which Minka had helped her wake. Some things remained eternal, however. Gold was one of them, and Daritza would use it to establish herself and learn more about what the world had become in her absence. In 3 nights she would return, and Minka would wake as well, wake into her new life as the pampered darling of her wealthy mistress, and as her willing accomplice in the revenge Daritza meant to take. Daritza looked about, saw the scraps of cloth her thorns had torn from little Minka. They were hardly what she was used to, but they would do. A whispered charm, and they were summoned for her inspection. Another charm, and the rents were mended together as perfectly as if the cloth had just slipped new woven from the loom. She dressed herself in peasant garb, which would serve well enough for the moment. She was about to leave to begin the tasks that must be accomplished, but turned back once more to the mound concealing Minka's body. What a feast the girl had been, Daritza thought dreamily. How she longed to begin teaching her the things she had promised, things that would please Daritza and in the end please Minka just as much. But that must wait its time. Daritza glanced at the rose she had caused to bloom atop the mound of earth, trap for her most delicious prey. Having served its purpose, it would have shriveled and died, as Minka had died once her purpose had been achieved. No matter, Doritza thought, setting her will to the rose with a final murmured spell. A moment later, a rosebud pushed its way above the earth, as red and exquisite as the bloom it replaced. There would always be roses, Doritza thought, roses and sweet girls. Doritza wrapped herself in darkness and went to seek revenge. The end.
Fantastic. Oh my God, I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. Fantastic. So well written. So much going on. And it makes me think some things that I read are not fantastic. And I'm either bored or I have to tie myself to the chair to read it or whatever, but this was absolutely delightful, and thank you so much for sharing it.
Oh God, you have no idea. You just have no idea. I finished writing it like about 5 minutes before I called you. This is very much a rough draft. I'm really happy you like it.
Oh, absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing it.
Oh, thank you for allowing me to share it. I can't tell you how much fun I had tonight. Thank you.
It's totally cool. I'm happy.